Hey Gainesville, it's Andy Malden with Bepine Realty and one of the sponsors of the Whoa GNV podcast. I just wanted to say I'm thinking of all of you. I know all of our lives have really been turned upside down. What was important just a short time ago doesn't seem so important now. Priorities have shifted, our behavior has shifted, and times are tough for a lot of us. But I just wanted to say thank you to each and every one of you for supporting the podcast, and thank you for supporting the local businesses here in Gainesville, and please continue to do so. This is temporary. There's a light at the end of the tunnel, and we will all get through this together and stay strong together. Be safe, be healthy, and God bless.
You are listening to WHOA Podcast, coming to you from Gainesville, Florida.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the WHOA GNV Podcast, the Coronavirus Sessions. Just to remind everybody what we're doing, every weekday we're going to be bringing you a half-hour episode, really talking with business leaders, business professionals, community leaders, everybody within the Gainesville community, just kind of talk and see how we're navigating this virus. And again, our goal is to make sure that we get more companies through this thing, we save more jobs, and we all come out the other end much better for it. And, I'm excited to get into it. But before we do, I want to introduce my man, the co-host, Michael Dees. What is up? I like your GNV BIZ shirt, bro.
That's right. And you can buy these and help support this podcast, which is really cool. WHOGNV.com. Go to the shop. I'm doing well. I'm told today is Friday. I don't really know what that means anymore. It's not
the day we're recording is Friday. I don't know when this is going to go out, but
yeah. But I'm doing good. Yesterday I got the first scooter sale I feel like I've gotten in 2020. That's not true, but it's been weeks. We did that by appointment, so that was good. I was able to help somebody that's actually deemed an essential employee. That's his primary transportation. So it's kind of cool to be able to help out that way and get some business for us. But other than that,
were you able to keep your social distance during the scooter sale? You were like, you stay over there, I'll stay over here. Like, how did you manage that?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, it was a bang sale anyway. I didn't leave the paperwork, because you have to, with paperwork, it's you got to make sure you know exactly where to sign. And the risk is, if they don't sign in the exact place, that you screw everything up. So I didn't go so far as to, put the paperwork in a lockbox or anything and send it to them. But we kept limited contact. It was good.
Right on. Well, I think we're going to see a lot more of that process going digital in the near future. It's going to be interesting to see how we evolve. And I know that we were looking at DocuSign. I got some other things to look into when it comes to that stuff. But before we really get into the episode, I want to thank our sponsors. Of course, we can't do this without sponsorship, you guys. And if you're interested in being a sponsor, we're offering really, really low, sponsorship deals right now, just because we want it to support our local Gainesville businesses out there. So if you're a local Gainesville business and want to get sponsorship on our podcast, definitely reach out to me directly, Collin at repaintthewall.com. And today's sponsor is our man, Andy Malden, man. Dude, not only does he sponsor the open bar on episode 100, which got me super toasty in that episode. If you haven't checked out episode 100, make sure our first mastermind session, if you will, where we had 6 realtors, and it was a little interesting. It quickly went from being our podcast to being their podcast.
Right.
But
I love that Andy's going to be the guy that he's going to be the guy that sponsored the open bar at the podcast.
Yeah, dude. He came in with the good stuff too, 14-year-old.
Right.
Scotch whiskey, everything, man. But you guys, Andy is a ACR, grew up in Gainesville, and knows Gainesville back of his hand, can help you with residential, commercial, investment, real estate. Definitely give him a shout. If you're looking to buy or sell a home, he's the one, man. Check him out. The best way to connect with him, which is really awesome, I think, is through Instagram. So go to Instagram and connect with him at Andy Malden Realtor. That's ANDYMAULDIN Realtor on Instagram. Love you, bro. Thanks for your support. So today on the show, we have my friend Jim Harrison of Meta Visual. Jim, before we get into this, we definitely want to talk about coronavirus, and really, I know that you're going to bring this whole creative aspect to it, which I'm super juiced and pumped about. Before we do that, let's just talk about, just tell everybody what you do. Give a 1 minute pitch of what you do, if you will.
Yeah, sure. Happy to do that. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
And
man, excited.
I've been in Gainesville as a creative professional for almost 30 years now. And so I've kind of gone round and round about how I describe what I do to people. I was just reading a book called The Creative Roller Coaster by a guy named Nick Udall. And he used a phrase that I thought, oh, that's really good. It's just a creative catalyst, right? The idea that, someone who's a creative professional who's kind of operated at many different levels across, advertising and entrepreneurship and graphic design and design thinking. And just what I do is I help people unlock their creative potential. Through my experience and my expertise, I lead teams and organizations and companies and clients, to help realize that there's a ton of potential creatively on their side of the fence as well as on mine. And so I like to spark ideas. I'm an idea guy. And that's kind of what I do. So Metavisual is my design studio and my design consultancy, where I work with clients to build brands and build visual systems and work on strategic communications, but I also do a lot of coaching, a lot of workshopping, a lot of speaking as well. So it's technically, I guess, more of a consultancy than anything else. But
Very good. So, why don't you tell us how this thing has affected you? Now we're a couple weeks in. Everybody's on lockdown. Everybody's at home. Yeah. How's that affected your business? What have you had to change in these recent weeks?
Well, I'll go back just a little bit. I founded Metavisual in 2007, right before the Great Recession. So my timing could not have been any better back then, right? And I decided late last year that 2020 was going to be the year that I took my expertise, and I was starting to get more demand for my time as a trainer and as a consultant and as a facilitator, design thinker, and a speaker. And so I thought, I really need to lean into that pretty hard. So I'm going to make 2020 all about traveling and speaking. And so, my two big forays into sort of starting my business and pivoting my business could not have come at the worst possible moment, which is a really great lesson to learn, right? Everyone's quoting the Mike Tyson quote, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth, right?
That's right.
It's how you sort of sort out how to adjust and get around the challenges that you face that really kind of test your mettle, creatively and force you to think laterally and shift your thinking.
So the hard part about that though is everybody's goals in December and January were 2020 is going to be our year. We're going to crush this. And we're going to do this. Here's the plan. Word of the year is frictionless. Frictionless is our word of the year. We had all this big stuff, and then in 15 seconds, it's okay, guys, new plan. Let's just see if we can actually get to the end of the year. Yeah, right? let's just survive.
February 15th, everyone's filing for, a refund on the year. Yeah. How it's affected me, just yesterday, as a matter of fact, I was reaching out to all my former graphic design students. For about a decade, plus or minus, I taught upper division graphic design at the university. And got several hundred students that I've dealt with, but really a core group of my former graphic design students. And yesterday I just realized, I need to start reaching out to them and touching base. I promised them all when they graduated, each class, I spent a year with them, and I promised each and every one of them, I'll always be here for you. I'll always be a resource for you. And if you reach out to me, I'll help you in any way that I possibly can. I thought this is a good time for me to remind myself of that promise, right? So I started reaching out to them yesterday. Some of them are wildly successful. Some of them are doing great. Some of them have been laid off or furloughed. Some are struggling. Some are freelancing and aren't sure, They just want to hear that it's going to be okay. So your question about how it's affected me is a really sort of, it's not a cautionary tale, but it's one that says, hey, we're all in this together. It doesn't matter if you've done it for 30 years like me, or if you graduated last year and you're just trying to sort out how to be a creative professional and you're dealing with this upheaval. This is a falling tide that causes everyone to reassess where they are. And it doesn't matter how experienced or how, talented you are and how, many clients you have or where you're at in your career. Everyone's pivoting. Everyone's saying, hey, how can I make the best of this, right? So how it's affected me? Yeah, I don't have a whole lot of work going on. I've got work that I'm pursuing, and I've got work that I'm finishing up and wrapping up. I've got a handful of clients and a handful of jobs that are on my plate right now. But I do hear the crickets chirping off in the distance, and I do see that road heading off into a horizon that isn't populated with a whole lot of activity, just like everybody else. And so, as I teach this stuff to other people, I'm saying to myself constantly, hey, time to walk the walk and do the things that you tell other people to do, like make the most of challenges, make the most of opportunities, make the most of downtime, reinvest in yourself so that you can grow when you have time to do these things, right? And I was reminded many, many years ago, I did a campaign brochure for a local geological engineering company here in Gainesville. And the visual motif for this 8 or 12 page brochure was an enormous boulder resting in your path, the problem in front of you, right? And so we did photo shoots where we put a ladder up against the boulder because you can climb over it, and we wrapped chains around it and had a hoist so that you could lift the boulder out of your way, and we had a detour sign so that you could understand how to go. They were all visual metaphors for how to get around your problems. And what I started teaching years ago is that if you do those things, you still leave the boulder in the road. That problem still exists, right? Why not take the problem and turn it into part of the solution? Because then you make the boulder an asset, right? You transform the problem into an asset that differentiates you or positions you differently or sets you apart in a way that gives you a competitive advantage that you didn't have before. And, I think it's so easy to be down when problems come, right? And watching the cast yesterday, you guys had a great time, continuing forward with confidence, right? And John Spence mentioned the emotional cycles of grief, right? And, it's easy to get bogged down in a cycle of grief, but when you can recover and get yourself in a positive mindset, it can be super creative and super productive to say, if that wasn't a problem and it wasn't it was an advantage instead of a problem, what would that look like? Let me try to imagine a world where that boulder in my road is actually something that gives me some huge advantage over my competition. And it's not always an easy question to answer, and sometimes you have to really work at it, right? But that's part of the positive mindset, like a builder's mindset, an entrepreneur's mindset, to say, it doesn't have to be that way. I'm not going to be constrained by those rules or those challenges or those problems. I'm going to let those things define how I get a leg up, on my competition. So I think a lot of people could really benefit during this time when they've got a lot of time on their hands, be an enormous challenge in front of them, right? And see in the back of their mind thinking, I know I need to invest back into my company. I know I need to invest that time back into sorting out all the things in my business that, Collin? That you put them on the shelf and you say, I'm going to get to that someday. I know that I need to take care of my brand, but right now I need to take care of my customers. And so these things I'm going to set here, but I'm going to make a note to come back to them soon. And what happens? Months and months and weeks and months go by, and you haven't taken care of some of your own business that can really be a benefit to you. We all have the wealth of that time right now. We're all super wealthy with the most valuable resource that human beings have, which is time. So there's never been a better time for businesses to pull all those things off the shelf and say, now it's time to focus on us. What are we going to do? How are we going to change? How are we going to differentiate ourselves? How are we going to grow ourselves and grow our business out of this problem? And in most economic downturns, right, the conversation is, if we do the hard work now, we'll be able to leverage more momentum when the gates reopen than our competitors who are sitting flat-footed, right? Which is this really cool argument that in marketing and communications, like strategic communications and advertising and design, my world, we're the canaries in the coal mine, because the first things that die are marketing budgets, and the first things that get chopped are advertising budgets. Advertisers and the media companies took an enormous, if you want to really wrap your head around how much this hurts, ask a media company how much of their advertising from their third-party clients got canceled. 100%. Like, full stop, cancel the contracts. We're opting out of our $6 million ad placement, right? I can't imagine the folks, like over at Cox Media or, some of the media properties here in town who are just underwater already, right? So we've always been the canaries in the coal mine, from the creative standpoint, advertising, marketing. And our budgets get killed first, right? And what do we tell our clients? What we always say to them is, if you are able to resist the strong urge to cancel and save all that money now, and actually double down, maybe not double down, but stay on that path to marketing yourself during an economic downturn, not selling yourself in a cheap and awkward and inappropriate way, but market your services and let the community know what you do, then you're actually going to be able to build your momentum during an economic downturn that becomes an enormous advantage. When we get through this and the world and our country and our communities start to say, hey, how can I connect with the people and how can I get back on this? There's going to be such an upswell of desire to do business that it's going to be crazy. And the brands and the companies that have built that momentum during the downturn are going to be quickest out of the gates. They're going to take that lead right away and put themselves in a real great position to be to win, as we turn past this thing.
Yeah, dude, there was a lot there. That was great. I mean, it's funny. I mean, even when you were talking about, Cox Communications and people cutting their marketing budgets, not only that, but they're even feeling the hit from, no sports. Like think about like March Madness and like the impact of, from an advertising standpoint. I mean, sure, there was millions of dollars lost in just revenue from the events themselves, but like even from an ad standpoint, those commercials are gone, right? I mean, it's incredible. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, now is the time to build brand. I mean, to build that awareness. I mean, there's just so much time and to invest in it. And just hearing you talk about like the things of all the stuff that we put on the shelf for later, I'm like looking at my ClickUp cards. We use ClickUp, which is like Asana, or like, a task management system, and like all the things where I have to go back and I like change the due date to like, it's like, the due date comes and then I change it to 30 days later. Right. And you just keep changing the due date until it's like 3 years buried. And you're like, oh, well, maybe I'll take that back and like work on that now that or have. Yeah.
Right. So for I use Trello, the same sort of thing, right? You've got that one column, that one group of tasks that are all the internal business that we need to do on a rainy day when we have time. And the only task work that you do with that group is changing the due dates and pushing them forward into the future. Well, now that is flipped, right? Now all the client work and all the business work has become so small and reduced because of this crisis that now we've got nothing but time to invest in the things that we've always known, deep down that we need to get to work on.
What I'm excited about, and I think this is, excuse me, I think this is going to be the case with many businesses is, of course you hear all these words and it's very commonplace, like evolve and adapt and like, yeah, sure. Like, I mean, evolve or die, like we say it a million times on our podcast. But what's going to be interesting is the businesses or the adaptations that are completely out of the ordinary for that type of business. I think some of the discussions that, even if we have in our business, I think there's potential for a new seed to come out of that, for a new thing to blossom that had never would have if it hadn't been for the circumstances. And I get excited about that kind of stuff, of just seeing what businesses come up with unique innovations and which ones stick once this thing is over.
One of the most enjoyable techniques and things that I run in workshops and teach, I have the most fun when I can help people understand that by taking what you assume are your limitations or your rules, right, around your business or your industry or whatever it is that you're doing, if you take those assumptions and you turn them into what if statements, you can really take the nature of your business, right? The narrow nature of what you do, broaden it out to include the things that you never thought you could do or that are rules that you don't want to break. Start building stories in your own mind about what would happen if you broke those rules and went in those directions, right? And you can turn perceived limitations into opportunities. I mean, it's literally, I mean, the story of Blockbuster inspiring Netflix is so ubiquitous, right? But that's all it is. What if you didn't have to pay a late fee, right? What if you wanted to be a keynote speaker that never traveled? What would that look like? What if you wanted to do a podcast that was all about, blank, whatever the things that you guys have been thinking about, right? Whatever your limitations are, if you build some what if statements and then challenge yourself to think creatively about what that world would look like if it did work that way, you'd be amazed at the pretty incredible wealth of ideation that you can engage in just by saying, hey, what if you didn't have to buy your tickets at a counter to get a movie, right? You buy them online. What if you didn't have to buy a ticket to get a movie? Oh, well, then you get a movie subscription, right? What if you didn't? What if you didn't have to buy your concessions outside? What if you could buy your concessions in a wall unit that was in the theater, so you didn't have to miss the key scene? You could walk over quietly, get your bucket of popcorn, sit back down, right? I mean, it's such a simple exercise, but it's one of those things that cracks open a world of ideas, right?
I like that too, because you are you have this like positive what if statement. I think that what's difficult sometimes, and this is where I've been in the last week. I'm just being completely transparent. I've been in a place of, okay, what if there's no football season? What if school doesn't start back in August? And so I go into this negative thought process of like, what if, those type of what ifs, like my those ones have been completely negative, whereas like everything that you're saying is completely positive and is like really forcing you to kind of think outside of the box. And
if you imagine that the world around us is an enormous learning library where you can look at other things in the world and learn from them to help improve your business, all you really need to do is get comfortable with the idea and get practice at the idea of sort of analogical thinking, right? It doesn't have to be a one-to-one perfect, you don't need to find another podcaster somewhere who's done what you're looking to do. You need to find someone who's done something similar to a situation you might find yourself in, okay? So let's do it for you for just a second. Let's do it. Okay, so what do I do? What does my podcast look like in a world where my kids never go back to school? Or my kids spend the next 2 years out of school? Okay, that's going to impact my ability to run my podcast a great deal. Okay, and we're making a lot of assumptions here, but let's just say that that's one negative situation. How do you turn that into a positive? Then what you do is you say, let me look out into the world and find something where, let me find a situation where someone has leveraged time with their children to enhance their brand or to enhance, whatever. The first thing that comes to my mind is Steve Irwin, right? Steve Irwin took his kids, put his kids in the background, let his kids grow up learning about what he did, put his kids in front of his audience, right? And it somehow turned into this like synergy around like the legacy of passing on respect for the natural world from one generation to the next. Now, that has nothing to do with what you do, right? It has nothing to do at all. But it's a lesson in the world that could spur you to reverse engineer something like, okay, then the next question is what would my podcast look like if my kids were on it? What would my podcast look like if our kids, right, not just you, what if our kids participated in it?
We're doing that, by the way.
Yeah, right. What would our podcast look like if a constant theme was the people that we talk to and the legacy they're trying to build with their children, right? All it really, and none of those things are right answers, and none of those things are like, gold mines that are going to revolutionize your brand until you really say there's something there. Let's talk that through, or let's build that out, right? So there's so much opportunity, and I really, really loved what Brandon West had to say yesterday on that webcast. He said, "Don't waste the pandemic." Right? That's just a bold statement, right?
Yeah.
We all want to close our eyes and push a button and wake up in 3 or 6 months and be past it, right? He's saying, no. You've got this opportunity. Don't waste it. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? And, I think that there's four. I don't know how are we doing on time. We got time to keep talking about this stuff.
Yeah, we got about 5 minutes. Definitely want to get one of Mike's questions in for sure, though.
Okay.
I've seen him. I've seen him writing over there.
Go ahead, Mike.
Oh, I was gonna let you finish your thought.
No, that's all right. I can come back to it.
Okay, right on. No, to be honest, it's rare that I get back seated like this, but I am sitting here just like my head's spinning with everything that you're saying. Just a lot of inspiration, a lot of like get back to work kind of mentality. But no, I was just gonna ask, like, I think the saying is it takes about 6 weeks for tasks that you're doing daily to become a habit. Is there anything from this, either that you're executing on the personal side, the business side, or that you're seeing out in the world that you're kind of excited is going to become habit, or that you're hoping becomes habit?
I mean, I don't know that it relates exactly to what I do on a day-to-day basis, but I'm starting to formulate this dream in my mind that what we're learning is that the world is not going to come to an end when we disconnect as a world, when we disconnect, right? I think it would be super cool if society, the world, learned that maybe we need to do this more often. Maybe as we learn to work from home, maybe as we learn to deal with the fact that our kids can be at home and still learn, and all these things that we're grappling with right now, if we come out the other side and go, it might not be a bad idea to do this every couple of years or every year. Like, what if we took the month of March off? What if the world shut down, not to an economic detriment, but what if we took the best of the opportunities that we're going to realize later in hindsight and said, we need to do that more. We need to, like, maybe March becomes a family, everyone comes together time, and maybe we disconnect from our digital devices. Maybe, like some positive benefit that comes out of this, right? So that's a habit that I would love to see, worldwide. On a more personal level, though, with regard to what I actually do, I think that there's amazing opportunity with this wealth of time that we all have, right, to engage in some of the habitual behavior that actually enhances your creativity, right? So we talked a lot about momentum, and that's kind of paradoxical. We think we're losing momentum right now because the world is spinning down. But it's actually a time where brands and companies can build momentum, right? We've already spent a lot of time talking about that. But there are some other things that you can do that are great habits, okay? And here's the first one that's probably the most, probably the biggest one, okay? There's this concept of freshness, and Steve Jobs talked about creativity is just connecting things. And the people that are really creative are just able to have enough life experiences to connect more dots than the next person. And the more dots you can connect to kind of form and spark new ideas, the more creative you can be, right? What that requires is the raw material of freshness in your life. That means not routines, not habits, systems and ways of doing things, right? If you can simply take a different route to work, right? We're not all going to work right now, but let's assume like the day-to-day. You read a different magazine this week. You listen to a different radio station. You pull up those podcasts that you've been waiting to hear and listen to them for the first time. You talk to somebody new. If you can habitually begin to introduce new inputs into your brain, those are just dots waiting to be connected later. You never know. 6 weeks, 6 hours, 6 months, 6 years, you might be able to spark an idea and see something in a way that no one's ever seen it before, right? A lot of people define creativity as seeing the world that everyone sees and noticing something no one's never noticed before, right? Again, just connecting the dots. And the more of your life that you can turn into opportunities for fresh input, right, is enormously important. And the most creative people in the world want to soak in as much as they possibly can, because all they're really doing is stocking what my friend Duncan Wardle, former VP of Disney for creativity, calls the kitchen pantry of your mind, right? If you do the same things every day in the same ways, you've got rice and beans and a couple of spices in your pantry, and you're always making rice and beans, right? With some mild variations. But the more experiences you put into that pantry of your mind, when you're faced with a tough challenge or a tough issue or an opportunity, and you need to spark some fresh new thinking about that, the more raw material you've got to draw on, the better off you're going to be. The higher your chances of being able to see something and notice something that no one's ever seen before and turn it into something productive and valuable. So
that's great. I'm going to be replaying this episode back so many times. This has been like such great content.
It's good, man. I mean, so we had Jim scheduled to come into the studio, and because of the virus, we had to kind of change things up a little bit. But I appreciate your flexibility, man. We're gonna make that studio time happen too, because I want to do an hour conversation.
Yeah.
And dive deeper into a lot of this, because like I'll be honest, I haven't gotten my fill here yet. You know, I can just I can keep going and keep going. And keep going. So I look forward to when we can be within 6 feet of each other.
Yeah, right. You know, it'd be cool. We could do a live strategy session. Like, we could talk about things all day long, but let's bring a challenge in and we can workshop it a little bit and talk it through and like start to sort of like sink our teeth into it. And I think that people could get a lot from just kind of seeing how, you know, the ideation and the generation of fresh thinking kind of happens.
Yeah, I love it. We'll definitely do that. Yeah. That'd be awesome.
All right.
I'd be all about it. So cool. We'll definitely make that happen. Thanks for your time, man. Really appreciate it.
Here's a fresh idea.
Yeah.
You turn that into a sponsorship opportunity. Find a sponsor and say, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take your business. We're going to take a challenge that you're facing in your business. You come in, you're actually going to be a sponsor / guest. We're going to have Jim come in, and we're just going to talk about how to be creative about things like what you're dealing with. And it's going to help a lot of people that are in similar situations.
I like it.
See?
That'd be a lot of fun. So,
boom.
Cool, man.
Creativity.
Awesome. Well, we'll definitely follow up with you on that. Just so our audience can connect with you or do business with you, where should they reach out?
Absolutely. So first, my email is metavisual. That's METAVISUAL Jim, no punctuation, metavisualjim@gmail.com. And my website just has a hyphen in it, META-visual.com. And there's a form where you can reach out and contact me there, and I'm happy to help. Right now, what I'm doing is anyone in my network, anyone in the Gainesville community, because I've invested so much of my career in celebrating Gainesville and all it has to offer, I'm giving free strategy work to anybody who needs it right now, anybody in the community. So if you're one of those people that's asking, how might we do this? How in the world are we going to do that? What opportunities exist, and you just need that objective sounding board, someone who can kind of facilitate the conversation for you and help kind of spur and spark and be a creative catalyst, I'm happy to do that for anybody at this point.
That's awesome, man. Thanks for doing that.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys. It was a real fun time. Let's do it again, yeah?
Yeah, for sure, man. I can't wait till the next time.
All
so
right.
Gainesville, everybody, thank you so much for listening. Definitely look for these every weekday at 12 p.m. And, we're looking for support too. We're trying to fund these things. And like Mike said, definitely, go buy one of our shirts. If you're interested in being a sponsor, reach out. And if you just want to make a donation, we'd appreciate that. You can just Venmo me directly at Collin Austin, COLLINAUSTIN. We're grateful for any support, and we hope that you guys found this valuable. At the very least, leave us a review. Tell people, share it with somebody. We would really appreciate that as well. So Gainesville family, we love you. Stay safe, stay strong. We're going to get through this. This is the WHOA GNV podcast, the podcast bringing you businesses and individuals that make you go, whoa. Give me your best whoa, fellas.
Whoa.
We'll see you later, guys. Bye.